Why would anybody watch a scum show like Videodrome? Why did you watch it, Max?
Business reasons.
Sure. What about the other reasons?
All right, and it's time for another movie review.
Yeah, this is a Cronenberg flick.
Yes, and I've been wanting to do one for a long time. I actually want to do Dead Ringers too, because this movie and Dead Ringers are my two favorite Cronenberg movies.
I don't know, I think this one and The Brood.
Yeah, well, The Brood's
Videodrome.
All of Cronenberg's movies are good, and
Yeah.
I've seen them all except for Fast Company, which was his action movie that came out in 1979, which I've heard is not that great.
Right.
But I've seen all of his other ones, and all of his other ones are awesome. Like, I don't think he's made a bad movie.
One of the best things about Cronenberg is that he's connected to John Carpenter. They were buddies.
Yeah.
And then John Carpenter was buddies with the Crussell. So there's like this Crussell connection.
A synergy,
Yeah.
if you will.
That's one of the reasons why.
Russell synergy.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I like Flash Gordon. Because Flash Gordon was almost played by the Crussell.
Oh, okay.
Did you know that?
So it's like 6 degrees of Crussell.
The Crussell is somehow connected with all the movies that I like.
Maybe the Crussell is like the secret of the whole universe.
Yeah, he's in there. He's in there somewhere.
He's in there somewhere.
Yeah, it's kind of like 0 point energy. There's something called Crussell point energy.
He's at the crux
It's
of
just-
the entire
yes,
fulcrum of human existence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's my bromance that I have with the Crussell.
That's so cute.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, today we are talking about the classic David Cronenberg film, Videodrome, from 1983.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly, this movie, and this came out after Scanners.
Yeah.
Now, Scanners was actually a pretty big hit.
Yeah.
Because, you know, Scanners is kind of a more straightforward horror movie. Everybody loves the exploding heads, you know what I mean?
You see, I saw these back when they came out. When I
Yeah,
was like 12.
I saw Scanners at the drive-in, yo.
Yeah, I saw one. I was like 12 and 13, and they were coming out on Cinemax, and they had like this illicit feel to them.
Yeah.
When you were a kid, you had to stay up late to watch them.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe you really didn't want to get caught by your mom, you know what I mean?
Watching the
these
shit,
things,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Because then they'd say, no, you can't watch those.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, because, I mean, especially Cronenberg's early films are very seedy.
Yeah.
And I think Videodrome is kind of like the apex of the seediness.
Yeah, and the way they're shot, you know, they made you feel very disoriented. And, and you weren't really sure what the movie was about, especially when you were younger. You're like, wow, is this really happening to this guy, or is he tripping? You know, what's this director trying to tell me? And there's something just that the way they were shot, there was kind of a cheapness to the feel, which kind of made it more scary. And it wasn't so cheap to where, you know, you no longer believed it. Like, you know, they had some cheap horror movies and you're like, yeah, that's full of shit. But this one was right at the edge, the quality level. You know, you knew it was a serious movie.
Yeah.
You know, but it wasn't a full-blown Hollywood production style movie. This is something that really you weren't supposed to be seeing. That's kind of how it felt.
It does have that vibe to it,
right?
And like the coolest thing about Cronenberg, one of the coolest things about Cronenberg, is that he makes very intellectual, cerebral type of horror movies. They're almost kind of like, I want to use the word anthropological.
Okay.
You know what I mean? They're very, like, detached.
Right.
In a similar way as Kubrick's films are. Yeah. Like, they're kind of detached from the story. Yeah. But then on the other hand, they're very visceral. They're very gory. And they're very concerned with, like, people's insides manifesting themselves on the outside. And, like, the merging of biology with technology, that kind of thing. That's kind of, and disease. That's one of his, like, big themes.
Kubrick he was good, too. It's like, you know, The Shining, of course, that was one of our first episodes that we did on 13 O'Clock. You know, we talked about that.
Yeah.
But Kubrick was kind of highbrow.
Yeah.
Cronenberg was kind of lowbrow in a certain way.
Well, he's kind of, the thing I was, like I said...
lowbrow Kubrick, in a way.
Yeah.
He would do things that Kubrick would say, no, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, probably
that's not acceptable.
Although I would argue, too, that Cronenberg is actually highbrow, but lowbrow at the same time, and that's hard to pull off.
Right, exactly.
And so, like, if you can find a director that does... Because I'm into that. I like that aesthetic that's, like, really smart, but also really kind of yucky and disturbing. And there's not a lot of directors that do that type of shit. Yeah.
And I would say, and you know, Carpenter, he liked Cronenberg.
Yeah.
He actually named characters Cronenberg in his movies to honor him. You know, they were bros. Yeah. You know, but I would have to say that probably Cronenberg was a little more consistent.
Than Carpenter. Yeah, Carpenter probably about 75-80% of his movies were good. And then some of them were just like,
Carpenter was better when he was young and independent. Yeah. When he started getting involved with studios and when, you know, in the big, trying to make big bucks and he's, you know, dealing with Hollywood directly. and especially after he got a little bit older, I think he was just trying to knock movies out.
Yeah.
Let's knock this movie out.
I mean, the interesting thing about Cronenberg, the interesting thing about Videodrome is that Videodrome was actually, and he had made several movies before that.
Yeah.
Shivers, which was also very good, about a sexually transmitted disease or like a parasite.
Yeah, that was a cool one.
Yeah, that was a good movie too.
Gotta get that
one. And he made Rabid too, I think, before Videodrome. Okay. But Videodrome was his first film that was distributed by a major Hollywood studio.
Yeah.
And it was because it was on the back of the success of Scanners and other independent movies that he had done that Universal said that they would distribute this movie. Now, he had never really dealt with the Hollywood system before, so he had never had to go through like test screenings and stuff like that. Now, when Videodrome was test screened for audiences, they hated it. They didn't get it. Right. They didn't, you know what I mean?
But it was a shorter version of the one that we had.
It was, yeah, because that's something
that... took too much out.
Yeah, that Cronenberg is very, and he will say this himself, that he is a ruthless editor, and that sometimes he takes too much out so that the story is, like, incomprehensible to the point, you know what I mean? And a lot of times, and also in the case of Videodrome, the script was actually not finished when they started working on it.
One of the things that Cronenberg did is that he kind of made shit up as he went along.
Yeah.
Which, that's good, because he had a bunch of different possible plot lines that he would be working on at once, and it kind of helped to the feeling of kind of alienation that you got when you saw it.
And,
And you weren't really... but you know what? It added to the visceral nature of it. Things were spontaneous, you could tell.
Because the story was evolving. It
was evolving as he was going.
In the same way. So it was almost like a meta, like it was almost... commenting on itself.
Yeah, well, he tries something out in the movie and he said, "Oh man, I really like that. I thought of something. Let's go this way."
Yeah.
Let's steer the story towards this direction.
Yeah.
And you can't really feel it when you don't know that.
Yeah.
But when you're told that and you go back and watch it, you go, "Oh yeah, I see why he did that."
Yeah.
That's good. He did the right thing.
Yeah, he had actually written 3 different endings for Videodrome.
Right.
And didn't really decide which one to use until the end. And some people have argued they didn't really like the ending as much, but I think the ending was actually pretty spot on. So
I don't know what the other 2 possibilities were.
Yeah, I don't either. So it's kind of hard for me to say because, maybe the other ones...
Oh, I know one of them. In one of them, he commits suicide and ends up on the floor, the showroom floor of Videodrome.
In the clay room.
Merging sexually.
Oh, right.
With Deborah Harry.
Okay, that might have been rad too.
Who was the other one I saw? I can't remember who the other girl was. Oh, the woman that ran...
Bianca. Oblivion.
Bianca Oblivion.
Yeah.
They all kind of merged in together in some kind of weird sexual union, and they were all part of the new flesh, which you have to understand that they were morphing.
Yeah.
So it had been kind of like a scene out of The Thing.
Yeah.
Where you have
which between this and The Thing probably had the best special effects of any movies at that time. And Rick Baker did the effects for this one. He did them in 2 months.
Yeah.
And actually, they still look pretty damn good.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that Videodrome was shot in an insanely short period of time. It was shot within 90 days.
Yeah.
And it had to do with Canadian tax laws.
Yeah, like a tax law they had. Like, if, at the end of the year from September to December, there'd be, businessmen looking to do an investment in a movie. But you had to do all the principal photography between September and December. You could do, like, post-production and shit like that after that. But to get the money, you had to make the movie. All the main principal photography had to be done between September and December.
Cronenberg found an angle, and of course, that was the angle that he used. I'd have done the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
he got a lot of movies made that way.
Sure.
Now, the cool thing about Videodrome, and I think one of the reasons that it's one of my favorite movies of his, and actually I think it's kind of the epitome of the Cronenberg movie. It's the most Cronenbergian, I guess you could say, of all the Cronenberg movies.
Yeah, and you know what? Before it's good, this is a bizarre movie, people. If you haven't seen this movie, this is what you need to see.
And it's very ahead of its time.
It's way ahead of its time, and it's not so bizarre that it becomes nonsensical. Like there's certain aspects of, say, Eraserhead that they're just so surreal. You can't really grasp it. I can't. Not a dummy like me.
Well, David Lynch movies, you need to see them several times.
Right.
Like, before the narrative becomes clear to you.
Videodrome is a bizarre movie that makes sense. You can understand it basically on the first viewing.
And the cool thing about it...
You can't understand every element of what... Right. But on multiple viewings, you go, okay, I see what they're talking about.
Yeah, and the cool thing about Videodrome, too, is that, like I said, it's a very intellectual exercise. Like, it has a lot of, like, philosophical things to say about media and identity and and technology replacing human relationships and things like that. And you can enjoy it on that level, but you can also enjoy it just kind of as a gross, weird, like horror / sci-fi. Is it even a sci-fi movie? I guess it kind of is. I don't know what, it's not really classifiable in that way.
No, the premise of the story is a guy who owns a cheap television station, is trying to find the best softcore porn that he can put on there. He dealt with the Japanese, and he bought a series, but he wasn't all that.
Yeah, he's looking for something edgier.
Right, and one of his technical guys finds a clandestine signal that he thinks is coming from Malaysia via satellite, and it's ongoing murder.
It's like snuff. They're like, they basically just bring people into a red clay room.
And it's called,
they torture them and kill them.
And it's called Videodrome.
Although at first they don't know that it's real snuff. They don't find that out till later on. They just think it's someone faking it.
And it's not. There's no sex in it. It's just torture and murder in a red room.
The walls are electrified, I think.
They thought it was.
Yeah.
Some of the walls were electrified. I remember seeing it. It looks realistic.
Yeah.
And on the version that I have is, I have what's the Criterion?
We got the Criterion collection.
And they have all of the torture scenes that were cut out.
Yeah, because they actually filmed, a lot more than they showed in the movie.
And how it's shown to you as an observer is they're in a television studio trying to dial in on this signal, and you're seeing it on television. You're never really there in the, you know what I mean, as an observer. You're never in there. So it's kind of creepy. You're watching a movie where they're looking at a television screen going, look at that. And that's how you see what's going on. So
it kind of immerses you in the story in that way, because especially for people our age that were kind of coming of age in the early 80s, when home video was just, coming into its own and getting really popular. And, sometimes you would get like pay channels and you would see like illicit stuff that you weren't supposed to see.
Because they used scrambling and stuff.
Yeah, because they used to do scrambling and like the Playboy channel.
It was another era.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah. So you'd like try to see, look, I think it's a boob.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean?
So they're trying to unscramble this signal and you see it, and it's only on for like a short period of time. The guy tells them I can only pick it up for like, I think, was it 20, 30 minutes at a time? Something
seconds.
Like that. Seconds at a time.
Yeah, he only had a few seconds.
That's right. And anyway, what's the weirdest part about it is that the guy who runs the television studio is like, I want that on my channel.
Yeah.
That's pretty bizarre reaction to that,
James Woods plays Max Wren, and he's like the head of it. It's kind of like a UHF station, I guess.
They never really get into it.
But, its whole mission is to show, like, basically just sleaze TV.
Yeah.
Just like softcore porn, violence, stuff like that.
Which you could not show on broadcast television.
Well, that's what, in some ways...
I thought it might have been cable.
Because I think because honestly, I've always seen this movie as a satire, a media satire.
Yeah.
And I think that Cronenberg is almost operating in an alternate Toronto, because that's where it's set, where this channel could exist.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
That's the only explanation.
Because they don't really comment on it, like, we're not allowed to show that, or we're not. I mean, they just do. They just show porn and they show like violence on TV, and it's fine. Like, no one really says anything.
Right.
Now, near the beginning of the movie, Max Wren is on a talk show, and that's where he meets Nikki Brand, who's Debbie Carey's character. Yeah. And really, this scene is kind of like the fulcrum of the whole theme of the movie, which...
Yeah, it's really cool because there's a television on set with them.
Yeah.
With a guy talking. His name's Brian Oblivion.
Yeah, he's like a philosopher.
Yeah, it's really cool.
And he's the one that actually came up with Videodrome, but I'll get to that in a minute. Right. The whole theme of the movie is, and like I said, this is Cronenberg. I don't think he's commenting, like, coming down on one side or another, but that's the cool thing about Cronenberg movies, is they don't really have a message per se. He's just observing.
Yeah.
And what he's commenting on, particularly in the early 80s when this movie came out, and like I said, with the whole home video boom and stuff like that, there was a lot of controversy over whether seeing porn or seeing these, like, horribly violent slasher movies would affect people's behavior, particularly in the UK with the whole video nasty scare and stuff like that, which I actually... there was a very right-wing government in at the time, and they were saying we should ban these movies or we should cut all this stuff out. Yeah, and there was like a huge thing about it.
In the U.S., of course, you had the Satanic Panic going on.
Yeah, similar kind of thing.
Yeah, in the U.S., it was more focused on music.
Yeah.
They were worried about what kind of music.
I mean, it was horror movies,
but there were some
yeah.
movies also, but I think in the U.S. it mostly manifested itself as the Satanic Panic. They were trying to hunt down rock.
But it was a similar kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that Cronenberg wanted to comment on what if, like, all of these moral guardians that think we should cut these movies and stuff like that, what if everything they said was true? Yeah. What if watching these images did fuck you up in a literal way? Like, they gave you a brain tumor.
Right.
And they killed you. Right. Like, what if that was literally true? Right. Like I said, I don't think that he agrees with that, but I think he's, like, making almost like a black comedy. Yeah. Like, commenting on
there was another
idea.
There was another subtext, too, laid underneath that. He was also commenting that many of the things people believe, many of the opinions people have, they actually got from television.
Yes.
All right. So the media is actually manipulating people.
Yeah. And like I said, he takes that in a very literal sense.
Right.
Because what happens, Videodrome, the television show, in some ways it's almost like an afterthought, because it turns out later that the signal that's underlying Videodrome that gives people tumors and gives them hallucinations and stuff like that actually does not have to be put under that show. It can be put under anything. It can be put under a test pattern. It can put under anything.
Kind of getting ahead, though, of what happens. He gets exposed to Videodrome, and real rapidly he starts having these weird hallucinations.
But they don't. The cool thing is that they don't mark when the hallucinations start. Everything is filmed exactly the same, so you don't know what's a hallucination and what's not.
And the main character is in every scene in this movie, so you're seeing reality from his point of view.
Yeah, everything is from his perspective.
You're not really sure when the hallucinations start.
No.
And he ends up trying to make contact with the people who make Videodrome.
Because he wants to buy it.
He wants to buy it. He wants to have it on his channel. And this leads him into a lot of trouble. His pornographer friend is like, no, you do not want to mess with those people that make Videodrome, because there's a philosophy behind that.
Yeah.
Which leads them to this mission called the cathode. What's it called?
Church? The cathode ray mission.
Cathode ray mission. And it looks like a church. And they're bringing in the nation's homeless and its poor. And they're solving the nation's problems by making them watch television.
Yeah.
That's some weird shit.
Well, because the whole thing, Brian Oblivion, who, like I said, is kind of, you only see him on TV screens. Yeah. And you find out later on in the movie that he's actually dead, but that he lives on, like, through these videos that his daughter Bianca has been, curating.
Any question you ask him, there's enough videotape that they can splice together to make a video, and he will answer your question that way.
Yeah.
And that he only speaks in monologue, and he only appears...
That is his preferred medium.
Yeah, and that he only appears on the cathode ray tube. And the cathode ray tube is an extension of the human mind, and that it's part of you, and it's really
like I said, it was actually very ahead of its time in its comment on how much technology and media has affected our lives, and
that the television screen is part of your body.
Yeah,
that's weird. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's one of your sensory organs.
Right. Yeah. And he's making that literal. So Brian Oblivion, he was the one that kind of accidentally came upon the Videodrome signal, and initially he wanted to use it for the betterment of mankind. He wanted to pretty much plug everyone into, like, a great human consciousness, I guess was his goal.
What they're doing, this is an 80s foreshadowing of the internet. It's basically what they're talking about. Yeah. But they're saying that, Cronenberg is saying that, well, video, in a way, and video rental, and cable TV is a kind of a prototype internet.
Yeah.
Is that
it's a similar idea.
Everyone can get the same opinions of life through video.
Yeah.
And then he goes on, he says, eventually each one of us will have our own special names that we will use on the screen. Yeah. He's talking about screen names.
Yeah, of course he is.
It's pretty cool.
And like I said, he really foresaw, like, a lot of the whole, image over substance or people's entire lives being conducted online, like, without any physical contact and things like that. So, like I said, very ahead of its time.
Right, and in the end, they're telling you to give up your body so you can just become the world of video, live on forever. Yeah. Kind of like transhumanism.
Yeah, it's very much like that.
Where you can give up your body and download your consciousness into the web and live on inside the internet.
Right.
Which that might be possible one day.
So like I said, that it was way prescient what this movie was.
Yeah.
But so the thing is, so Brian Oblivion, like I said, he actually thought it could be used for good, but after he died, the other guy who helped him find it, who was Barry Convex, who was the bad guy, under the guise of his spectacular optical company, who we make cheap glasses for the third world and weapon systems for NATO or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And all this other stuff. So he kind of stole the technology. Yeah. Now, what he wanted to do was use Videodrome to give tumors and kill people who were scumbags enough to watch Videodrome.
Right, yeah.
So you're kind of like, so he was kind of like...
a mechanism of moral purity.
A moral purity. Like he's saying, if you're enough of a sleaze to want to watch this, then you deserve to die, and this is literally going to kill you.
And they were going to use the symbol, they were going to use the signal to toughen up first world people, because the third world enemies were tougher than they were. Yeah. So it's to toughen people up and make them soldiers.
Yeah, and in the end, what they end up doing, because they wanted to... So they end up using Max Wren essentially as an assassin to kind of... Because they want to kind of test out the signal and see if it works. And so they are generally, very literally manipulating his brain.
Yeah.
And this happens in a series of very, kind of gross kind of shit where, James Woods, he develops that vaginal slit in his stomach.
Yeah.
And they put the tapes in it, and it's almost like they're programming him. This
is where Videodrome gets weird. All right, and it's weird from the very beginning.
It is a weird movie, yeah.
There's no real way to know as a viewer whether or not we are seeing hallucinations, or has this technology really allowed people to modify their own bodies? Right. Because the guy starts to become something kind of like out of the Thing. He can actually make someone else's fist become a bomb in one scene and blow him up. Did he hallucinate that, or did he really do that?
Or did that really happen?
Yeah, you don't really know. He also put a pistol inside his own body, and then later took that pistol out, and it merged into his hand. So his hand was a pistol. And he's going, long live the new flesh, and all this. There's a very Christian motif to some of this stuff that's going on about, rebirth in, the spirits, kind of like the spirit of the Lord. But I can't remember exactly how he termed it. Yeah, it's a bizarre flip.
Yeah, it was like a rebirth in a non-physical form is what he was basically doing.
And I think what was going on is maybe Cronenberg had heard about prototypes of the internet, because they existed at that time. Yeah. In the 70s they did. So maybe he was imagining where television and the internet were merged, and people could merge in with that. Yeah. So I think Videodrome, really looking back on it, I think it was Cronenberg's imagination. This dude's got a hell of an imagination. Oh, yeah. He was imagining transhumanism, and he was imagining internet and how a person could go inside the internet physically by downloading your consciousness into it.
It was just done with video, which was the technology at the time.
The technology at the
time.
time.
But it could be interpreted as internet, too.
Yeah, he was interpreting it in kind of a horror-type fashion. Right. Internet.
And like I said, and another cool thing, a cool thing about all of Cronenberg's movies, but this one in particular, is that the main character of Max Wren, who's played by James Woods, is a scumbag. I mean, basically, he's a scumbag.
A scumbag doesn't believe in anything.
Yeah, and, even after he finds out that Videodrome is actual snuff, he still wants it.
Because, I'm going to put that on my show.
Okay, I'm going to put that on TV. He doesn't have any moral quandary about it whatsoever.
No principles.
Yeah, and the reason, the fact that he had no principles was the reason that he was manipulated so easily by both sides of the inventors of Videodrome, and was able to be manipulated. But the cool thing about it, though, is that Cronenberg does not judge him. No. He's still a likable character. He's likable, he's relatable. Even though he's a sleaze, you still kind of empathize with him.
Well, I think he symbolizes your average, television slob, who doesn't really have opinions of his own. Yeah. He's just getting his opinions based on what he's being told or what's being shown on television. Yeah. And that's who the main character is.
In a way, it's almost, as detached as the movie is, his performance is very nuanced, you know what I mean?
Pretty cool.
Yeah, it's he's still a very likable character. And like I said, Cronenberg doesn't really comment on, whether any of this is good or bad.
No,
or
it's not judgmental.
He's just observing. Yeah. And he did the same thing in Shivers about the sexual parasite, where everyone was kind of turning into these sex fiends and stuff. Yeah. He didn't say that was necessarily good or bad.
No, the sex
He just
zombies.
said, this is what happened. Yeah. And he wasn't, commenting on it. But, and I also want to say, if you really like Videodrome and want to see something else in that line from Cronenberg, if you haven't seen it, you should probably see Existenz from 1999, which is, I saw it when it came out, and I remember really digging it at the time. I don't think I've seen it since then, but it's kind of a similar theme to Videodrome. And it should be noted, too, that all the movies that Cronenberg did in between Videodrome and Existenz were adaptations, or he didn't write any screenplays, but you know, he wrote Videodrome and he wrote Existenz. Yeah. So it's almost like they bookended. Because in between, he did like The Dead Zone, which was a Stephen King adaptation. He did Naked Lunch, which was William Burroughs. He did Crash, which was J.G. Ballard. And, you know, all this other kind of stuff. So
also have to mention Deborah Harry. Deborah Harry did a really good job.
She's rad in this.
Yeah, her acting was really good. And it's surprising that we didn't see her in anything else.
She was in some John Waters movies, I think, if I remember correctly. Debbie Harry, I've always loved Debbie Harry. She's like so sexy and so cool. And she was like the perfect...
Yeah. For the time.
She was the perfect person for this role.
Yeah, for that time.
She was totally believable. She
looked great.
Yeah, she's gorgeous in this movie. She's really good.
And sometimes you see her performing live in certain areas. She looks a little rough, but in this picture, she looks very glamorous, really good looking.
Yeah. And, you know, she, like you said, it was kind of a shame she wasn't in more movies. But, like, she was in a lot of...
movies, but she wasn't in, like, any cool horror movies or, you know, not that I saw.
Yeah, like I said, I know she was in some, but I can't remember. I know she was in a couple John Waters movies. I want to say maybe she was in Crybaby or Serial Mom. I can't remember.
I think Crybaby had that porn star in it.
Tracy Lords.
Well,
yeah, I know she was in it.
I don't think Deborah Harry was in that one.
Well, that was it. That was 1990 though, so she might have been in it as like someone's mom or something. I haven't seen that in a long time either. But you know, like I said, so you know, probably you should see Existenz because, like I said, it kind of explores the same. It's about virtual reality gaming and shit like that. So it's kind of the same, you know, sort of theme. Yeah. And
but you definitely have to see Videodrome.
Well, yeah,
it's a weird movie.
A classic. And like I said, hated at the time. It was actually a financial bomb.
Yeah,
at the time, unlike Scanners, which was very successful, people didn't get it. They didn't get it.
They put it on cable though, and it became a late night cable sensation. Everyone remembers this movie,
so it's almost
and it influenced a lot of other movies.
Oh, it really did. It was kind of one of those kind of sleeper movies where
over time, I'm sure it made money.
Oh yeah, it probably did, but like at the time, it really didn't. So that'll probably do it for this one. I definitely want to do another Cronenberg movie. I want to do Dead Ringers because that's my other favorite one.
Got to do The Brood.
And yeah, we probably got to do The Brood too.
And the one with the sex zombies, we got to do that one too.
Shivers,
yeah.
Also known as It Came From Within. We just saw that recently.
Yeah, that's the first time I had seen it. I liked it.
Yeah. Well, you should probably... He's made a shit ton of movies. And like I said, I'm looking at the list and I've seen them all. Yeah. Other than that one action movie from...
And I've also got to give a shout out to that Criterion Blu-ray version.
It's really nice.
It's really good. It's got lots and lots of extras. And when you open it up, inside of it, the case looks like a Betamax.
It looks like a Betamax tape really cool. With like a handwritten label on it.
Yeah, it says Videodrome.
That says Videodrome on it, like it was somebody's. It's so rad.
Yeah, and it has hours and hours of extra stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of really cool extras on it. It's really, really highly recommended. Now, I did hear that the British version, the Arrow version, actually has more extra shit on it that's not on the Criterion one.
Yeah.
But
they say the transfer is real similar.
Yeah, but the transfer is similar, so, you know, it depends on what kind of extra shit you want, because this one had a lot of good extra
Arrow version probably has more.
Yeah, I think it does have a little.
But it doesn't have that cool box. It didn't have that cool box.
Yeah, it didn't have the cool box. It had a cool cover, but it doesn't have the cool...
Betamax box.
The whole Betamax looking thing with all the test pattern lines and stuff like that on it. Yeah. It was really cool. But yeah, definitely recommended if you have not seen it. Like I said, horror sci-fi classic, and certainly one of my favorite Cronenberg movies. And that'll do it for this latest movie review. Please remember to visit us on Patreon if you would, and like, share, subscribe to our channel and all that good stuff. And we'll be back with another movie review as well as another episode very soon. See you later.